Hello, I'm Declan Drohan,
And I'm Max Hafler.
and we are Chekhov Training and Performance Ireland. And today we're sharing one particular exercise from the Chekhov technique with you, the one that's known as the Three Sisters, which deals with the sensations of rising, falling, and balancing. And interestingly, it doesn't appear in Chekhov's To the Actor. It's an exercise he taught towards the end of his life, notably to the actor Jack Colvin, who's passed it on to a lot of our colleagues and friends, and it's become an established part of the technique as it's taught and practiced.
If we consider that an awful lot, in fact, if not all, of Michael Chekhov's psychophysical exercises are to do with finding sensations and feelings, then this little area where we're talking about balancing, floating, and falling covers an awful lot of the energetic, emotional movement that we actually have when we're experiencing something.
I fall in love. I rise to the occasion. Our language is full of it.
So first, we've got to find out what this feeling, this sensation of falling, rising, and balancing actually consists of, how it actually works for us in our bodies. So Declan, could you just stand in the space, please? So just feel your feet on the floor and feel yourself in the space in your room. And pay particular attention to the soles of your feet and how they make contact with the floor. And then become very conscious of the fact that you are balancing. However solid you may actually feel in the space, that you are balancing. And now, just very slowly, start to take your weight to the right. And don't unbalance yourself so much that you're going to fall over. But just try and find that point where you may or may not actually tip. And notice what the sensation actually is. And without hurting yourself, just take it a little bit further. So you might actually go. And now bring yourself back to the center.
There's an uneasiness with being off balance. I noticed that immediately.
Mm-hmm. And you look more uncertain the further you went. You know, the more off balance you became. So there's a kind of gradation there, which is interesting. Let's try putting your weight forward. Just very slowly. That's good. Okay, don't go too far. So get again a sense of the cusp. And now very slowly bring it back.
I'm reminded, as our friend Leonard Petit says, that direction is a force. When I tip forward, I want to keep going forward.
Now reestablish that sense of balance. And then slowly start to take your weight backwards. And just be comfortable with that, and then bring yourself back to the state of balance.
Without me doing anything, there's a sensation of being overwhelmed for me when I move backwards. Without me looking for anything or seeking anything, that comes with that movement.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's amazing, isn't it, really?
Mm.
Okay.
The wisdom of the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in this next portion, let's look specifically at this polarity of rising and falling. Max, can I ask you to come into your working space, please? So you're going to sit on your chair.
Okay.
Okay. So let's start with this. Again, to establish a baseline, just again, feel your weight pressing into the chair pressing into the floor. That the natural direction is downwards as we sit in this position. And you're breathing. And if your body has an attitude, it's an attitude of waiting and listening. And in a moment, you're going to find an impulse begin in you, an impulse to rise. But we'll wait for that impulse to build, to grow, to develop. So you go from sitting to standing in your own time and when the impulse comes. And without decoration or embellishment, that reaches a particular end. You will now wait for the impulse to sit, quite simply. And there is, I guess, a psychology of the body which tells us that that in itself is eloquent. Let's, I don't know, connect one word to this action now. Let's say that the impulse to rise is connected with the word yes, and that the impulse to fall is connected to the word no.
Yes. No.
Okay. And we call these kind of movements archetypal in the sense that we know these things in our body. We know what no is, we know what yes is. And if we have the spine of this exercise, a direction upwards and a direction downwards, that there is, it releases something. It reminds us of things, it connects us to other aspects of human experience. Let's try one more experiment with this. Let's add, instead of a word, a line of text. Let's say that the impulse to rise is connected to the phrase, I love you.
Okay.
And also the impulse to fall is connected to the same phrase. So we really explore the polarity of that piece of text.
I love you. I love you.
I love you on the rise seems to mean something different. When it's filtered through the action of the body, it comes to mean something completely different. There is, I guess, resignation or defeat in falling for the moment, and there's hope and declaration and a statement of intent when we rise. I think, though, we have to be careful not to say rising is good and falling is bad, because, you know, there can be great certainty in descending into, I love you. I know what that is now.
I mean, it's it's so complex that just this movement can actually, or these two movements can incorporate such a multiplicity of feelings. Like, for instance, when I was sitting down and saying I love you, I didn't say I love you till I sat down, and because of that, it came out kind of resentful. So
there's a timing about where you are on the arc of activity.
It wasn't whereas you could sit down in a different way and it could be very defeated, or it could be, as you say, like a very almost comforting.
Can we try one more without words? And it's, let's say, and let's give it a context. Let's give it a very clear frame. Let's say it's the context of a waiting room where you're waiting for your name to be called, and you think you hear it, and you wait at the peak of that, and then you realize, no, it wasn't my name. It just sounded like my name. I've almost done it sitting. But again, for you to find that in your body, the impulse to rise because they think they are calling you. You think you're being summoned. Okay, let's find that. How was that?
Where I felt the energy the strongest was in that moment where I stood up expectant, and then it wasn't me.
Can I ask you to try it once more?
Yeah.
And can I ask you to stay and sustain the in-between for a moment?
Okay.
So you rise, you wait, you think, is it me? Is it me? You stay there, that plateau or that place. I want you to try and live in that a little longer. Okay. That is so rich. That is so eloquent. I keep telling students sometimes when they're busy acting that sometimes we should just get out of our own way and allow ourselves. I think it looked like you were flooded with material, sensation, and that is enough. That is a performance. You don't have to add something to that or embellish.
I tell you something that's interesting, which I don't know, is just something that I think is very important about this work. It is that in the first instance, I immediately saw a situation where that would happen, and I acted that situation. But I accented the for my impulse the situation rather than the lifting. The lifting was there and the falling was there, but the situation became paramount. Whereas when I did it the second time, I followed the instinct of the movement, and a situation only developed as I was coming down. I'd like us to approach the idea of balancing working with an image. And I'm going to just ask you to imagine, and I really want you to take your time with this. Imagine that you're on a very high place and that you have to walk a tightrope and just very, very slowly come towards the camera. Okay, that's good. Let's just try it one more time.
I go backwards.
You could go backwards, yeah. What's it like to go backwards?
The backspace is very, very potent. So it's even more destabilizing to go backwards. The unknown is turned up considerably.
Now imagine that there's somebody behind you who is threatening you. So once you start to walk, they're not going to come any further. But try and turn up the feeling that it's actually quite, it's very dangerous. Yeah, good. Right. That's great. What sense did you get when the circumstances were changed? How did that alter how you did it and what sensations you had?
It's interesting because we think of these as separate things to teach, and we do teach them separately: to rise, to fall, to balance. But all three are present in that exercise.
Yeah.
Because you are aware that your energy is upwards to maintain this thing. You know about the force and the potency of down, and you know about the importance of trying to maintain an equilibrium. So the three things are present. Also, you really, and I realized teaching this with people who are less experienced, the feeling of ease starts to slip away very quickly when we have, because there's a tension that can creep into this. Yeah. But you really feel you're playing on a line. There's a really clear spine to this exercise when you work in that way.
Yeah. Well, it's the rope.
It's the rope.
Right. Let's use your I loved you phrase. Use the image of walking on the tightrope and just explore what that is. What's it like in your body first before you say anything?
It's that balancing feeling. I feel the consequence of what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
I love you.
One more time.
I love you.
Now imagine that you're running along the tightrope or going very quickly.
I love you. Oh, I can see my arms. My energy body arms are moving. I'm trying to be very still because I need this to be received by the person I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
But I'm internally very busy while I'm
yes,
doing
and that's very visible. We spend our entire lives balancing life and work, balancing whether somebody's going to like me or not like me, whether they love me or they don't love me. Do you know what I mean? All of those things. And
should I reveal more of myself or not?
Yes, and
all of those things.
So the thing about balancing is, in a way, it's amazing that it isn't taught even more in Chekhov technique than it actually is.
You really have to explore that with your whole body to know for you what those things are.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, I said earlier, there's a danger in thinking that, falling is bad. falling in love,
Mhm.
falling into complacency. They're not the same thing. They both have falling in it. You know, we shouldn't judge these things. We need to explore them, but not judge them.
Yeah, I would say that balancing, I think that's right. I would say that balancing is largely about us trying to take control,
Mm, mm.
you know, but you kind of can't, not for
No.
very long anyway.
So we've worked with whole body explorations of rising, falling, and balancing. But let's see what happens if we make that a more internal process, perhaps as we'd use it for acting for camera. And I think it really becomes a potent part of the actor's armory, in a sense, when you feel you can move between the states. So let's almost like, I think of it almost like an air bubble in a spirit level. Where is the where is the bubble in the spirit level? Exactly. So if we work with just Max, if you start with perhaps because you're sitting, let's work with falling first, that you feel the descent, but you feel it internally. You don't have to signal it, or you don't have to share it externally, but you just work with the sensation of falling internally for a moment. What is it to focus on or discover or channel this feeling of descent? There are these three possibilities, and they play you. You allow them to play you. Yeah, it's very visible. It's very tangible to us that there's something going on. I remember when I was in acting school in the 80s, they used to talk about inner movement, and I never knew what they meant, and they could never explain it. But there it is. There's an inner movement. Thank you, Max.
It's it's a very potent exercise, just in terms, partly because it is small.
Yeah.
But you feel like something very powerful is going on. And I think what's wonderful about that, and what's wonderful about,
You're being
yes,
moved to
you're
do it.
being moved, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
When, you know, when all you have to do is get this, you know, explore this movement.
And there's an element of surrendering to this, rather than saying, I will force this and I will make my performance. And you're allowing the force to move you, the force, the energy to
No,
move.
but it is
It's
that's right.
shaping you. You're not shaping it, you know,
Yeah.
or it's at least it's a dialogue.
Well, it's more real, basically.
Yes. So it's a very rich, very eloquent, uh, expressive tool. Michael Chekhov himself didn't write an account of this exercise or approaches to this exercise. So where will you find it? The first published account or delineation of this exercise is in Frank Chamberlain's excellent book, where it's quite a short description. That was the first published account of it. And our colleague Leonard Petit in the Michael Chekhov Handbook for the Actor, first and second editions, he folds it into talking about sensation, and talks about specifically locates it in terms of that your body already knows these things. There's a very eloquent, the entire, you could say, DNA of the human race is in each human body. So you know what these things are. You can connect with them quite immediately. And also in Cynthia Ashburger's Rhythm of Space and the Sound of Time, there's a quite a considered kind of workshop breakdown of possible uses of the Three Sisters exercise.
Thank you so much for your time and your attention. Take care, Max and Declan. Chekhov Training and Performance Island.